Hello, in this video we're going to go over how to process film using our chemicals. So assuming you've already watched my video on how to load film into the film processing canister, you are good to go, or maybe you just know how to do that and you're ready for the next step. You need to now at this point have your film in this canister. Remember that your film is on the bottom if you only have one roll. If you have two rolls, they're stacked on top of each other. Watch the other video on how to do this and you'll be good to go. But we're going to start the chemical process. The first step, and I'm using ultrafine chemicals that I get from Ultrafine online. You can use any chemicals you want. You'll just want to check the times on those chemicals to see what they are. I'm just going to be using the times that I use for the film that I have, which is also from Ultrafine, and the chemicals that we're using here in this lab, which are all from Ultrafine. Before we get started, some things that we'll need are, of course, your film. Now, this is a practice roll of film, so I can open this in the light, but if you had just rolled your own roll of film, you would not be doing what I'm about to do, which is opening this. This is light proof and should never be opened until you're done the full process of processing your film. So what this looks like inside is your film is on the bottom and it's in there and the lid is on. So you need all of that to get started. You also need a container to measure your chemicals. A funnel is handy to pour chemicals back into their jugs. And of course you'll need your chemicals. So I'm using Developer, Stop, and Fix, as well as HypoClear. Hypo is another word for fix, so this is basically, you can think of it as soap that clears away hypo, so it washes fix away. And then the last chemical you'll need is called PhotoFlow, and I put it in this little dropper because you really only need like 1 or 2 drops. I use 2 drops. If you have 2 rolls of film, you might need 3 drops. It's always handy to have soap around. I've got some organic lavender soap, thank you very much. And we're good to go. If you want, you can wear gloves on your hands to protect your hands from any residual chemicals. I often do. I'm not going to for this demo, but completely acceptable to wear gloves, which I have in this lab. Now, before you start with the container, you'll want to make sure it's rinsed out. Rinse out all your containers. And we are doing kind of a beginning basic film processing, so we're not going to be checking temperatures. We're not going to be super nuanced with how we agitate and things like that, but we will go through all the steps. First step is to run water directly into your container for 2 minutes, and you don't want it to be hot, but it could be slightly warm or cold, of course, and just run it. You don't need it at a high pressure, you just want to get the water wet and ready to receive chemicals. Once it's run for 2 minutes, you are ready for the next part of the process. Now, while it's running, and by the way, one other thing that you will need for this process is a timer. I've got a timer right up here, so I'm using that, and I just have it set to go continuously, and I check it as needed. But you could use any kind of timer that you have, and just make sure that you're doing everything for the right amount of time. You do not want to be guessing in this part of your photographic process. Okay, while that's running, you can also rinse out your container if you've got another sink, or wait till it's done and rinse this out, and then measure out how much developer you'll need. So I've gone ahead and rinsed that out, and let's pause for a second because it's really important at this point to go over some safety issues. We are using chemicals. They're mildly toxic. You certainly don't want to get them into your bodies. You don't want to ingest them or get them in your eyes or anywhere inside your body. But if they do get on your hands, you'll just want to wash them, and that's why it's good to have soap around. It's also handy to have a towel or paper towels easily accessible so you can use those as you're doing this process, especially if you've got an electronic timer that you're going to be fiddling with. you want to make sure your hands aren't wet while you're doing that. So your hands do get wet. You want to be able to dry them and be able to use the electronic equipment if needed. So the chemicals are mildly toxic as far as getting on your skin. Just make sure they're washed away. If they get in your eye, make sure to wash that out. Don't have drinks or food in any area that you're processing film. It's just not good practice because you're more likely to ingest the chemicals that way. Also, when you're done, wash your hands really well with soap so that you make sure you get any residual chemicals off your hands. So if you go out and eat or drink or something or touch your face, you're not getting chemicals into your body. Now, long term, these chemicals can have more of an impact. So if you're going to be doing this for a long time, you might want to consider wearing gloves as you do this. If it's just kind of a thing you're going to do really occasionally, or you're just trying it out, just make sure that you keep your hands clean. It's good to have ventilation also. I do have ventilation in this room. Often I will wear gloves though, just because I've been doing this for many decades and will continue to do this for many decades. So I want to make sure the chemicals aren't getting into my body in a kind of slow, continuous way. All right, let's continue. That's been going for 2 minutes. I've rinsed this out. I'm now ready to measure out my developer. Check your particular container and check your developer for times. Check your container for how much you'll need. It should say on the bottom. For example, this one has a chart on the bottom that tells me how much I need for 1 roll of film or for 2 rolls of film. So 1 roll it says 11 ounces, and 2 rolls it says 20. I actually go a little bit higher just in case, so I do 12 for 1 roll and 22 for 2. So just on the safety side, the way I like to pour chemicals is I put my finger on the line, and then I pour the chemical as far away from my face as I can hold the container and still see that line. There we go, right at 12. So you pour out the water as I just did, and then pour in the chemical. And then you're starting your time, so we're doing 11 minutes, and you want to agitate the container at this point. There are lots of ways to agitate a container. By the way, you would start doing this right away as soon as you pour the developer in, but because this is instructional, I'm taking the time to explain. There's lots of ways to agitate. These containers have these little agitators that come with them. You can also lift it and shake it gently. You can also invert it if you've got a lid that keeps the chemicals from coming out. But I prefer to just do it this way. And if you stick this in, you can just spin it. And what it's doing is it's spinning the film around in the chemical and getting fresh chemicals on the film. So what you do is you would have poured the developer in, and then for the first 30 seconds, you turn this and you're agitating the film inside the chemical. So let's say that was 30 seconds, then we'll pause and we let it rest. And you let it rest for 30 seconds and then turn this for 5. And let me actually correct that. You'll let it rest for 25 seconds and then turn that for 5. So like every 30 seconds, you're turning it for 5 seconds. And there it goes, and we'll turn it just a few times for about 5 seconds. There we go. And then we'll wait 25 seconds and turn it for 5 seconds. And you do that the whole time. So I'm doing 11 minutes for this developer, and this film is 11 minutes in the developer. And every 25 seconds, you're turning this for 5 seconds. So you're staying with it, you're watching your timer, and you're agitating it every 25 seconds, getting nice, fresh chemicals flowing over the film. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done this for 11 minutes. It's done. You want to get the developer out. Now the developer, you're going to dump right down the drain. There are some ways to reuse it, but I don't do that. So you'll just dump it right down the drain. And the next chemical is stop. So you'll find your stop, let's get this lid on so we don't lose that lid. And you'll get your stop container. And the way that I do this, you could measure it out and do like 12 ounces again, but I think it's a lot easier just to pour it in and just watching the top of the tank, not the very top, but you're looking inside. So you're looking inside here, and just when it gets up above the little hole that's inside there, then it's filled enough. And this will be for 30 seconds. So you're just going to agitate it the entire time for 30 seconds. Okay, and then once that's done, you'll pull this out, open this one up, get your funnel, and pour the chemicals back in. So all the chemicals can be reused except the developer. The developer goes right down the drain. The stop goes back in its container. And the next chemical is Fix. And again, you don't have to measure it. You just pour it in until it gets to the top. And now that I have chemicals out of here, I'll show you that. So there's this hole right here. And you want to fill up the chemical till it's right above that hole inside the tank. And then you know you've got enough chemical in there. Okay, so Fixer is next. Make sure you know your containers. This one, if you hold it sideways, actually pours better. If you hold it the way you think you should hold it, it gets all over the place. Okay, there we go. And this is a 5-minute bath. So we'll agitate for the first 30 seconds. And I'm just going to do a few turns, but it would be 30 seconds, and then we let it sit and we do the full 5 minutes. While that's happening, and you can do this while some chemical's in there, you can rinse out the items that you've been using. So this and this need to be rinsed out because we want to get the chemicals out of there so they don't dry and leave a residue in there. So remember to always rinse all the equipment that you use in this process. All right, and we'll keep agitating this the same way the first 30 seconds, and then for 5 seconds, every 25 seconds. Okay? Okay, so I've gone ahead and let it go for 5 minutes, agitating it accordingly. And now I'm going to pour it back into its container. So again, the Fix goes back into its container. I'm going to rinse this out before I move along. Get that nice and clean. Put the lid on, and now I'm ready to go on the next step, which is a water bath. And again, the way we do water is we just run the water right into the hole in the center of the tank, and we let it run for the allotted time, which in this case is 2 minutes. And I'm going to actually wash my hands because they got some chemicals on them. So I got some soap. Okay, let that run. I'll start that timer now for 2 minutes. And once that's gone for 2 minutes, which mine just has, you can pour the water out. I'm going to rinse this out also as I'm doing that. Okay, the water is all out of there, and the next step is now HypoClear. And HypoClear is just like a special soap that washes away the fixer. So we'll pour that again. We're just eyeballing it, looking at the little hole in there and waiting for the chemical to fill up to just above that hole. And this is another 2 minute bath. And we'll do that for 2 minutes. Same process, it's always the same with every chemical. We agitate for the first 30 seconds, and then for 5 seconds every 25 seconds. The only time we don't have to agitate is with water, because the water's running, and that's the same as agitating. You just want fresh flow over the film. So we've done that. We've let this go for 2 minutes, agitating accordingly, and we're going to pour it back in. Every chemical can be reused, except for the developer. And we do another water wash at this point for 5 minutes. So we'll let that run for 5 minutes. I'm also going to take the opportunity to rinse this out. Always rinsing out the equipment that I'm using so that it doesn't get chemical residue dried on there. So 5 minutes now of water running over the film. And the last chemical that we'll use is called PhotoFlow, and I'm going to prepare that now while this water is running. So I've got this container here, and I know that I just rinsed it, but you know what? I'm going to rinse it again, because I always like to rinse things after I use them and also right before I use them, especially with the containers. And this one's real easy to mix. You just take 2 drops. If you have 2 rolls of film in here, you need about 24 ounces of water. So you use 3 drops. So 3 drops if you have 2 rolls. If you have only 1 roll, just 2 drops. 1, 2. Could y'all see that? No. I'm going to reenact that. 1, 2. I now have 4 drops in there. It's okay. And then you'll fill it up. So 2 drops is 16 ounces of water. So again, there would only be 2. And you can see that it gets a little foamy. I go a little higher because I did put 4. Okay. It's really foamy because I put 4 drops, but it should only be 2. Okay, let's wait now, and it's been 5 minutes of the water running over the film, and we're ready to do our last bath, which is the PhotoFlow. And what the PhotoFlow does is it's kind of slippery. If you stick your fingers in there, you'll feel it's kind of slippery like soap. And what it does is it coats the film so that when you hang the film to dry, the minerals that are in the water don't create like a ring of minerals as the water is drying. So it keeps minerals from hardening onto your film. So this is a 30-second bath, and you can use your agitator, agitate however you want. If you don't have one of these, you can agitate gently like this, giving it just a gentle spin. You can do that with any of the chemicals. You don't have to use this. Also, sometimes you'll have a lid and you can actually invert the container. I don't do that with these containers. So you'll do 30 seconds of agitation, which it's now been. And then you're ready to take your film out and look at it. So you do not want to run any more water. The last chemical that touches your film should be the PhotoFlow. You'll pull your film out. There's your empty reel on top, and there's your processed film on the bottom. Now again, this was a practice roll, so there's not going to be anything on it. And this is, let's go through that there. So you can take this one off, take the tube off. I like to give it a shake, and then gently push it up, and just keep pushing it around a little like that from underneath. So I'm just pushing it up like that. And usually at some point when you have about that much film off, you can grab the film by the edge, and if you hold this, it'll just pull right off. And then you can take your film and hang it up to dry. At this point, if you have processed your film, again, this was a practice roll, so I could open it and show it and look inside, and it could be exposed to light, but you would see your negatives at this point. You would see your images on here, and it's a good time to just kind of look at them real quickly, but you don't want to go out of your lab area and walk around with it or risk it falling. If dust settles on it, it could dry into the surface of the film and be difficult to get out. And of course, the dust, if it does that, will show up in your prints. So you don't want to do that. But do take a peek and see how you did, and then hang it up where you've got a place to hang it. So I'll be hanging the film in these old school lockers, and if you're in my class, you'll be doing that. So open up the locker. And there's a string hanging there with clothespins. If you're trying to make your own drying cabinet, you do want something that closes that doesn't get a lot of dust in it. So any enclosed space that's pretty small, you can create some ventilation in there with filters if you want things to dry really quickly. But even just hang drying, it only takes about an hour. So hang the film up by the clothespin. Make sure the clothespin is not grabbing onto an area where you've got pictures, because it could crease the film and make that picture not look great when you print it. So get it hung up. If it's really curly, you can put a clothespin at the bottom of it and keep it straight. Just make sure that there's not an image there that you're clipping that on. And if it's too long, you can cut the roll in half in between two images and hang them both up separately. At this point, you want to start really practicing holding your film by the edges and not grabbing it in the center. You don't want to leave marks on the film. I've been a little loose with that just now, but do keep in mind, because I knew that it was a practice one, but if it were a roll that actually had my images on it, I would be really, really careful, only holding it by the edges of the film and the very ends where there's no pictures. So your film is hung, it's ready to dry. Make sure you've closed the doors so no dust gets in there. If there's other film drying in there, try and be quick about it so you're not getting dust in there onto other film. And once that film is dry, you're ready for the next step, which is preparing the film to look at and to be printed. So congratulations, you've done a good job, and I bid you good day.